here we go again. So, the fandom of Boruto, Naruto Next Generations are upset, up in arms, disappointed, all of that jazz after getting the preview for Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode 179. That's next week's episode as of the recording of this video. Next week, because we just got 178, and from what I saw so far, I haven't finished the episode, but from what I saw at 178, it looked great. It was the introduction to Ao, and you know that this is where things really kick off for the Kara arc and all of that jazz from the manga, so it's supposed to be an exciting time, because again, episode 178, it looked pretty damn good, and overall for an anime-only standalone episode to a certain degree, it was emotional and impactful and all of that jazz, so good stuff there. But the preview for 179 with the introduction to the main members of Kara, fans are not happy or pleased at all at what the character designs look like. Now, mind you, most of these have been characters that have not been shown in the anime at all, and it's been, what, 3 years now since this material, almost 4 years that these characters were showcased in the manga. So I think one of the issues that people are having is that these designs of these characters from the manga are so heavily ingrained in our minds at this particular point that any little change is automatically, and don't worry, I'm going to get to it because I'm not thrilled with the designs either, but any little change is going to make people feel a certain way, because again, it's been 3 years, over 3 years at this point of looking at these designs and being like, oh, okay, so this is what they are, whatnot, and then seeing now the drastic change for a few of them is just kind of like, what the heck. But in the preview, we get to see some of the members of Kara. We see Jigen for the first time. I think this is like the first time where we're fully getting him showcased in the actual anime episodes, if I'm not mistaken. We got Amado. Of course, we still got Victor. Victor's there because the whole preview is showcasing Victor, and Victor basically plotting to swindle Kara of whatever it is that he's seeking, because obviously his plans fell through in the arc of him and Deepa and all that stuff. So that's basically the premise of it. And then we also see the character design as well for Delta. Now I'm going to go one by one. Again, we already seen Victor, so it's nothing. That's his character design, and I think they did a pretty damn good job. But let's start off with Jigen. I say Jigen is probably the worst offender of all of these designs. Looking at him, like, I don't know. I think one of the problems that they're having here is Ikamoto, he put a lot of detail into some of these character designs, and it seems as though they wanted to simplify it. Also, it seems very, very bright, and I get it that the Kara arc is a lot darker than anything the Boruto series has had thus far, but the color palette is very, very bright, and the character design, it just feels as though like they wanted to simplify it so much that it lost a lot of its zest. I mean, some people are really upset. Somebody said that he looks like a dead fish, and I was just like, god damn. But yeah, Jigen is probably one of the worst ones that I'm not really rocking with. Like, he's too bright, too simplified, and in general doesn't have that same badassery that his manga counterpart has with the design. And then we also have here Amado. We heard a little bit of Amado's voice, and it was like, okay, I expect him to have a little bit more of a gruff voice, but then like his character design as well, he just looks like a bit different, and again, for an adaptation you expect it, but I'm not sure what it is that it just doesn't feel quite right. Again, I think the color palette is very bright as well for him, and he just looks a little different, I guess. I don't know if it's because it's different that I'm not vibing with it so much, but it's like, it doesn't have that same, again, I don't know if you'd call it badassery or rugged nature that Amado had. And then Delta, aka Android 18. No, Delta, the main problem I'm seeing people have is with her eyes. They changed the design for her eyes. I think, again, this is another case of having too much detail in the eyes and stuff like that, and the character design in general. But honestly, I would say that aside from maybe the color palette and maybe a few adjustments that they can make, I like Delta, that then they like, yo, they made her a little bit more voluptuous, so to speak. So I'm fine with that, because when does Boruto ever do that, or Naruto franchise for that matter ever do that? Like, they made her a little bit thick, and again, it's not as great as the character design in general. Like, none of them look as good as their manga counterparts, but it's not horrible per se. And also, let's add a little bit of information here, because apparently this upcoming episode was outsourced to a very low budget studio. I don't understand why they made this decision. I think that that's a horrible idea. Like, yo, this is the premiere of the big baddies of the entire franchise. Why would you allow their debut in the anime to go out like this with a studio that clearly doesn't know what they're doing? Because apparently, from my understanding, in Jump Festa, we're going to get more of this, and apparently that's where we're going to see like how the characters are really gonna look, their designs and whatnot, because again, this is from a low budget studio that this was outsourced. When Period shows like, oh no, this is how they're really going to look, it's going to be different. That could also explain why in the opening a lot of people had issues as well with what like Kawaki looked like to a certain degree and whatnot. Like, that's probably because again, like once everything like gets a full overhaul for the next opening, and you know, Studio Period and their personal like best workers work on this, things are gonna look different. So I wouldn't immediately dismiss and say like, oh my god, they ruined the Kara members' designs and whatnot, which again, Delta to a certain degree, I ain't that mad about Delta, because we gotta wait and see when Jump Festa arrives, what they're gonna showcase, what type of trailer, what the animation art is going to look like once Studio Period is taking the helm. It's just bad decision making. Like, you don't put out your prized possession, which again is the Kara members. You don't put them out like with low budget stuff. Like, you want to do it right ideally to get everybody excited. So yeah, it is disappointing. Again, I'm not a fan of especially Jigen's character design. He looks like, from the opening already, way back when the debut, was like, okay, he looks a little too bright, but then this one, like, a la the person that said dead fish. And Amado just looks a little bit, I'm waiting to see when we get the Jump Festa stuff. I'm not going to immediately dismiss it, and either way, when we see it in motion as well, and like some big budgeted episodes, I'm imagining they're all going to look fine, and also the color palette is probably going to get darker as we move forward. Just hopefully it's not as like, because the brightness is just like, I think that's one of the things ruining it. It's like, this is really dark stuff, these are some dark guys, why do they look so freaking bright? But I'm curious, what do you guys think about these character designs? If you're watching this right now, first of all, Jigen, what do you think is the problems with this character design? Why do you think people have an issue with it? Is it too bright? Is it the lack of detail? Or just in general, like the character design, they ruined it and it just doesn't look good? Likewise with Amado, like I said, I think the offenders in order is Jigen looks the worst, Amado is like, he looks a little bit bigger than he did in the manga, and then Delta, I don't know, there's some improvements in certain areas, I'm just saying. And your expectations for when the Kara arc kicks off, I'm looking forward to it regardless. Like, even though the art in this episode is probably not going to be great by any stretch of the imagination, and the animation is going to probably be wonky moving forward, it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day when Madara appeared. I want to say one of the first times when Madara very first appeared, like when he came out of the coffin, they had like a V-list studio, and then the following episode was just godlike, Madara fighting all these shinobi. It was insane. Probably they're going to do something similar with Kara. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, boy. Have an awesome day. Peace in, and Kara's here, finally, quite a few years later, but it's not looking as hype as we would have thought the debut would be, but yeah, it is what it is.
It's nights like this, and times like this, that I can give another hit, but I've got this inside a switch, a natural bliss. But